Okay. Week 5 here. We're kind of running through Antro's Eighth Circuit Brain course here in memoriam to him in 2024 here. And I am creating these videos to kind of give my current thoughts on the circuits and how I see them, or dimensions of mind, as I prefer to call them. So we're here on the fourth and the eighth circuit or dimensions. And so to run through real quick, let's see. We've got circuit, or I'm going to go for the dimension. First dimension, the infant, the lover, through the process of birth, separates from its creator, basically asks itself as its life as an infant, is the world okay? It's not really this sense of self, but this need to know if the world is okay. It knows that by feeling connected to the mother, its mother, which provides a sense of security and safety versus a sense of fear or terror when feeling unconnected, unloved, unsafe. Um, then we have the second dimension, the dimension of the toddler, who's the warrior. The warrior separates from its mother and begins creating boundaries, saying no, and kind of what's me, what's not me, creating this sense of self, asking itself, am I okay? And this is sort of the realm of emotional, as well, like I said, sense of self, and through that kind of both first and second dimension have this component of regulation, emotional regulation through safety, and all the other complex emotions, as it develops a sense of self. Versus the flip side of the second dimension is shame, complete dysregulation, and loss of a sense of self. Third dimension, and I want to stop here and just say these dimensions all kind of overlap. There's not these discrete, nothing happens until you're born. In fact, a lot happens before you're born. There's a lot of development in the nervous system and the brain going on. Probably concurrent development. It's not like once the infant starts crawling and walking, it becomes a toddler and the first dimension development is done, and we're now in the second dimension. These things all overlap. So almost concurrently with toddlership, we have this preschooler going on, the magician, and so this third dimension of the preschooler, as Jung calls it, the separation of the world parents, which is kind of weird and abstract. But imagine the world is just me and not me, but then suddenly the world becomes more dualistic, and I begin to see patterns and complexity. Excuse me. Symbols. Symbols complexify into language, and that goes into concepts. And this is the realm of conceptual intelligence and self concept, and that we have a shadow of the part of us we don't conceive of, that we don't look at, and we tend to project that shit onto other people. And so the third dimension here is about reclaiming a lot of it. There's a lot to it. A lot of what I'm talking about is reclaiming our projections, and we reclaim our projections through being in relationship with the people we project onto. And that's one way to do it. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at and developmentally. So the brain and nervous system goes through this huge phase of development and growth from conception until about 5 years old, and we go through these first dimensions that I've been these stages of the first three dimensions I've been talking about. And then there's a period between, say, 5 and puberty, where we're learning and growing, but we're not, our brain and nervous system isn't going through this rapid growth phase. It's actually just chilling, so to speak. Latency phase, as Freud called it. So I'm not really counting that as a developmental stage, but then we get to adolescence, and boom, we see some growth in the prefrontal cortexes, but also a completely different process, which might be more described as maturation as a compared to growth and development. So it's kind of a different thing going on neurologically. And of course, the adolescent, we'll call that the king, or the archetype of the king or the sovereign. And what the hell does all that mean? Well, so the adolescent is moving from its family of origin, its parents, its siblings, and going into going out on its own, or starting to form where there was kind of this mother-child, parent-child relationships that are characterized by dependence. We depend on our parents. As you go through adolescence, you separate from your family of origin, you mature sexually, and you begin having more peer-to-peer or romantic relationships, I guess is a better way to put it, where there's this more interdependence. I feel like I'm rambling and not making much sense here, but that's kind of been part of the whole process. So the point is, adolescence, among other things, is where we separate from our family of origin and we move from dependence to independence and interdependence. And maybe the best phrase I believe I got from Antro in an astrology reading was like, "What is your role in the village?" You know, you're creating this independent self, and how does that fit in to your village or villages? And you know, there's a certain amount of domestication involved in that. There's a certain amount of guilt about how we should show up within our tribe, so to speak, within our village, and that leads to judgments. In like we're projecting concepts in the third dimension, we're projecting guilt and judgment in the fourth. So again, these are complex. I'm trying to boil them down and just look at a specific aspect. But I guess what I would say here is, one way to see where you're hung up in the fourth dimension is to notice where you're judging others, and to start unpacking that. And like, why do I have this judgment? Often it's based on a projection, and often our projections are based on shame and fear. So it's kind of, I just walked down the four lower dimensions right there: judgments, projections, shames, fears. Boom, 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 boom. So anyhow, again, so now looking at the upper dimensions and connectedness or unity in the fifth dimension, we're connecting and unifying with our physical body. In the sixth dimension, we're connecting and uniting with our energy body and our nervous system. With our seventh dimension, seventh, we're connecting with the world around us. And maybe another way to look at this is that it's often referred to as the neurogenetic intelligence. And so genetics to me indicates I'm connecting with all the living things around me that have DNA. One way to look at it, there are many ways to look at it, but what are we doing in the eighth dimension? Well, to the extent that the seventh is like I'm one with everything, the eighth is beyond space and time. I lose all sense of identity. I'm just kind of one with the cosmos. Quantum intelligence, beyond locality, beyond space and time, sort of a complete dissolving of myself. I don't know if that's making sense. I think it's important to realize these things are all kind of happening on a continuum, and to a certain extent, it's like, where do we draw the lines? So is the seventh dimension a sense of I'm separate but connected, and then the eighth dimension is where I lose all sense of self and therefore all sense of separateness, and I become one with everything? I'll leave that up to you to a certain extent. How would you define it? Certainly, if you go back and read the recently released Heliotos Press Starseed Signals, where Bob Wilson discusses a lot of the timeline around when he and Leary were refining the Eighth Circuit model. A lot of the discussion is like, where do we draw the lines here? And so, where do you draw the lines? What makes this uh, uniquely yours? I'm kind of giving you my version. And so, again, fourth dimension, separating from the family of origin, finding one's role in the village, moving from dependence to independence and interdependence. And so the way I see that is like I'm fully developing my sense of self and how I relate to the world around me and feeling connected to the world around me. Maybe I'm the mad shaman at the edge of the village, but I accept that and I accept my role and I have my village and I feel that connection. And so there's that connectedness, like I need to connect to the world around me so that I can move in the eighth dimension where I dissolve completely and there's no distinction between the world around me. There's no distinction between space and time. It's just all this yeah, whatever you want to call that. So anyway, I guess that's where I'm at with all these things here. um the next couple weeks are catch up weeks, and I want to discuss the hero's journey and how that fits into all this. Maybe we could talk about Chapel Perilous. There was something else I wanted to discuss as well, and I can't remember what the hell that was, but it ties into maybe just how time is changing. Chapel Perilous, I think we're in a global Chapel Perilous. I think no shit was the words Antro used when I asked him if we were in a global Chapel Perilous. I don't think he used no shit, but that's the words I'm using. Signing out. No guided meditation based on some feedback. I think I'm going to do a whole series of guided meditations on the circuits after this, and hopefully continue this blogging. It's kind of fun, awkward as hell, but good times.